A seller can get in touch with an insurance agent and look into if their home has to have the California Fair Plan or not. And if not, and it's a pretty higher risk all around it, but your home is not affected, it can be a huge deal. It just highlights the increasing housing gap. So according to Zillow analysis, the income needed to comfortably afford a home is up 80% since 2020.
Unfortunately, majority of the younger generation right now, they're not used to it. And not only not used to it, maybe they're not taught to save money. Or because of inflation and everything else, whatever money they're making, they just don't have the ability to save. There's a very high percentage of people who get into the real estate business and they fail. In about a year or two, they are out without even doing their first sale. The question arises, what kind of person succeeds being a realtor and what kind of person does not?
They have that victim mentality, I guess, or they don't have that work ethic and they kind of give up. The other thing is work ethic in today's culture is kind of almost like a bad word.
Hello everyone, my name is Paul Galushkin with Estock Realty, and today we have Tatiana, our broker, here today with us, and we're going to talk about a few things about real estate, some topics, some latest news. We want to cover things like the recent Fed cut rates and how it's going to affect home buyers, how it's going to affect the market, the California's insurance crisis, and what it actually is doing to real estate right now. Also, we want to cover the California Association of Realtors 2025 housing market forecast, what they got to say about that. We have election coming up in less than 40 days, and both candidates are basically talking about how they will be addressing the home affordability crisis. So, two different opinions on how to approach this is a crisis, especially for the younger voters. We know that for a fact. We're going to provide some tips for first-time home buyers. We briefly will discuss the NAR settlement and what kind of changes are there, because people are still questioning. It's already taken into effect, but there's not really much changes, but we're just going to briefly talk about that. One myth that I would like to debunk towards the end, and we're just going to talk about a few of the valuable lessons that we've learned along the way. So at first, I want to start with the California insurance crisis. There's an article about the California insurance crisis, and it says here, California's insurance crisis is so bad that home sellers are letting buyers back out of deals. We did see some deals come back on the market, and one of the main reasons this article talks about for why this happens is when a buyer puts in an offer, seller accepts the offer, they're going through the approval, the mortgage, obtaining mortgage, and then all of a sudden they realize that they can't find an insurance provider to write a policy on the home. I think that there's another approach that can be taken to avoid doing that in the middle of a transaction. What do you think?
Well, in California, we do have the California Fair Plan, or they call it the unfair plan. But there will always be insurance. It's just a matter of that it can be super expensive. So it's not the fact that they can't find an insurance company to insure them. It's just that the California Fair Plan or unfair plan is extremely expensive, and so they can't afford that. Sometimes the amount is just crazy. Some of the prices that we've seen in Florida, as many as 25% of the cancellations are for this specific reason, insurability. So it's not just California here that's coming across this problem, it's many other states.
So why can't they, before writing an offer or before the offer gets accepted, there's no way of finding out how much it's going to cost, what kind of insurance policy they can get?
So typically in the past, the standard practice was you get your offer accepted, then you go through your inspections, your loan, your appraisal, and all that. And it was kind of almost typical in some situations where buyers started shopping for insurance kind of later when the lender was like, hey, you have this other condition that you need to satisfy. In these cases, it's very hard to shop beforehand because now the insurance companies can't just give a quote based on a house. they give a quote based on the person too. So you need to provide your full name, your date of birth, and those kinds of things so that they can check whether you had claims in the past and all that in order to just provide a claim. So it's not that you and I can go and get a claim and that the buyer that comes along is going to actually have that same quote. Or you and I can get a quote and that the same buyer is going to have the same quote. All that has changed. Now, the practice should be as soon as you have a house that you're interested in, you should already start shopping the insurance now. So that's something that needs to change in the procedures. In California, the areas that are particularly prevalent or prone to wildfires are where heavy premiums have skyrocketed as much as 59.9% in the recent years. So imagine like getting a quote, what you thought you had, or possibly even some of the owners and sellers that are still there, they might have a insurance policy that was grandfathered in, and then you get a bid or a quote and it's like 60% higher than what you expected. So that's what's causing some of this.
We didn't have this issue like a year ago, right? And prior to that, I don't remember having
We a year ago, I think we did, but
a year ago.
yeah, but like before that, maybe 5 years ago or so, we didn't. But that is something that needs to change in the practice for real estate agents and buyers and sellers, if they can provide. Sellers should provide the insurance that they're paying and advise the buyers to get quotes before they submit an offer on their house, and possibly even make that a condition of, I will accept your offer after you have shopped insurances and understand what you're getting into before I accept your offer. Because you don't want to, spend all that time being in contract, lose out on other buyers, and then have this buyer wait until the last minute to shop and then back out because of that.
You know, what's interesting, sometimes people think that, to be in a high risk area, you have to go all the way up in the mountains and be somewhere in the hills, in the forest area. But in fact, what's really interesting, and we just recently found this out, that where we live, literally across the street, the policies, people are paying double of what we are paying. And it's the same kind of terrain, similar type of, neighborhood, very similar neighborhood. But it's crazy that would be considered a high risk area and not where we live.
And speaking of that, did you notice all the trees that were being removed from that
Oh
area?
yeah. Right now they're working on that right now.
Don't you think that has something to do with that? And the reason why our community is fire safe, it's rated fire safe versus they're not, because that community is a little bit older and they do have a lot more oak trees and mature trees that are considered like a fire safety or fire hazard. And I mean, this whole week, I don't know how many trees they've taken down, but I think it has something to do with that.
So would you say that, let's say, if a homeowner is thinking about selling their home soon, and let's say they've never really bothered to even consider to kind of create some safe space around their house,
Fire hardening?
yeah, do you think that may affect and maybe like reduce the chances that a buyer who is writing an offer on their home when they're selling the home, backing out because of that, and being proactive and taking care of that so that it's easier to obtain insurance? Do you think that is one of the things that
Absolutely.
do?
I mean, a seller can get in touch with an insurance agent and look into if their home has to have the California Fair Plan or not. And if not, and it's a pretty high risk all around it, but your home is not affected, that can be a huge deal.
Yeah.
That's a huge deal. I mean, one of the listings that we have, I got a bid on it. It's a brand new home, and the insurance on it is $20,000 a year
Wow.
for that area.
That's-
So if there was any way,
insane.
if that home, let's say the next door neighbor did something, and you get a certificate from the California Fire Department, and you don't necessarily need that. I'm not saying that is exactly possible, but I'm just giving an idea for like differences. And you say, hey, we don't need the California Fair Plan. Your insurance could be $7,000 a year. That's a big deal for a buyer.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the questions that we always get asked is, how's the market? And also, what do you guys think? Will this market last? How's the market going to be in next year, right? So California Association of Realtors just released their forecast for next year. Here it says California home sales and price are projected to increase as buyers and sellers return to the market, enticed by lower rates and better housing supply conditions. So their projections are basically their projections are that existing single family homes are going to be there's going to be an increase of 10%, and also that the median home price is going to go up by 4.6% in value. So the values are expected to go up by nearly 5%, and that the housing affordability will basically remain the same as right now, which is at 16%. So for those people who don't really understand, how do they calculate percentage as far as home affordability? Well, basically the way they do it, it's a percentage of households in America who can afford a median priced home. That's how they calculate. So the higher the number, the better it is. The lower the number, the worse it is, right? Anything you want to add to that?
I mean, I recently read an article, few articles, but one that I specifically want to talk about. It just highlights the increasing housing gap. What does that mean? Housing gap meaning the how much homes are worth and how they're increasing versus the income and how that's increasing. So according to Zillow analysis, the income needed to comfortably afford a home is up 80% since 2020.
Well, it's mainly due to the interest rate, right?
While median income has increased only 23% in that time.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty crazy. Those shopping for a home today need to make $106,000 a year to comfortably afford a home. Do you know what the percentage of people in the United States that make $100,000 or more a year? Want to take a guess?
10%?
Households, meaning a family, it's about 34%, while individuals are between 16 and 18%.
So a little bit more.
A little bit more than what you thought. But I mean, that's to afford a home. If you said 10%, you're saying that only 10% of all of United States can afford a home.
Well,
When you look at it that way, it doesn't make sense. Right?
well, it looks like it's on the track to
get to 10%.
to get to that, because right now it's not just that the incomes aren't keeping up with the home values. It's the fact that like we just talked about, the insurance
Inflation.
is going,
What about
inflation, cost of living, like
Energy,
everything is going up.
repairs,
Yeah,
all that. So people that are
student loans.
wanting to buy a house have to also accommodate that. So it's not just the cost of homes. They have to accommodate the inflation that we have faced too. So
I think another thing is that people leaving colleges, people leaving universities, and just the way of American life. Like a lot of people are just kind of used to living on credit cards, on borrowing money. So when they are ready to buy, they go and they got all these payments, right? Because then they're doing the debt to income ratio, and that ratio can be super high if you have, like $40,000-$50,000 worth of credit card debt. You got student loans, you got a car that you bought that you're still making payments on. All of those things, they affect your ability to purchase a home.
buy now, pay later. You like those shoes, but they cost too much? Pay $20 a month, and so forth. All that adds up. Absolutely.
I've kind of, researched, because I was interested in hearing what the two candidates, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, have to say about how they're going to be addressing this issue, because they realize that a lot of people are voicing this concern, and the home affordability is a major concern, especially among the Gen Z voters. So I looked at what Kamala Harris is proposing. She is basically talking about providing some kind of a down payment assistance. But I guess we don't really know the details, like who can qualify for that down payment assistance. Is it enough to solve this issue long term? Which I feel like it's a short term solution, and it's very, very vague. It's like, we're gonna help you. You don't have any savings. You're not qualified to buy based on how much you need to bring, but here's a down payment assistance for you. You can go and you can buy a home. So that's her approach. His approach is a lot with regulations, and I can kind of understand why it's the regulations, because when we look at the cost to build a home,
When you say his is regulations,
Donald,
what do you mean?
We're talking about Donald Trump.
Is he increasing
No, I'm going
them?
towards that. I'm going there.
Okay.
So Donald Trump is proposing one of the solutions to address home affordability crisis is to lower regulations.
Okay.
So here's one thing that I kind of wanted to briefly talk about. People sometimes wonder, like, what kind of regulations are you talking about? Are there actually regulations that affect the home prices? Well, yes. So when a builder goes to build a home, we've built some homes, we know what it is. They need to go and they need to get a permit to build a home, right? Just in Sacramento County alone, these are some of the regulations, meaning some of the fees that you have to pay when you pull a permit. So you got water, storm, drain, sewer taps, water development fee, water meter fee, utilities fee, public works fee, on-site review, encroachment permit, revocable permit, driveway permit, Sacramento Health Department fee, Sacramento County Regional Sanitation. It's like we're talking about right here, just like the county, the local county, like all of these different regulations that they have. On top of that, there are state regulations and then there are federal regulations. So like, just if you want to build a house that's 2,000 square feet, I calculated that you're going to pay almost $50,000 just in permit fees because of all these regulations, and also with the zoning, what you can build, what you can't build. Like, these are the things, like the bottlenecks for builders. So when they actually do build a house, they have to sell these homes for these high prices because it costs them a lot. And we're just talking about like the local ones, but then you got when you're dealing with someone like lumber, for example, right? Because a lot of homes are built with 2x4s, and I was just recently talking to someone, I forgot who it was, but they were saying that in California, like a lot of the lumber companies just kind of went out of business and they had to move away because of all the regulations with like environment. You can't cut down trees here, you can't cut down trees here. So then they have to import a lot of lumber from Canada and far away. So that the cost to ship here, it goes up and stuff. So two different approaches to handling. And also another thing that Donald Trump is proposing is to build on federal lands. He's saying that there are a lot of federal lands that are protected, and he's like, why not build there?
So for Kamala, the questions that I would have would be, where is the money coming from? And who will it benefit? Meaning, who will this program benefit? Who's going to get the down payment assistance? Those are kind of questions that have not really been answered. So it's really hard to kind of gauge that, if it will help or if it will do the opposite of helping. In the past, knowing that if sellers know that a buyer is getting a grant from the government or some kind of money from the government, they also want a part of it and they want to increase the price because they're like, hey, you just got $150,000 government payout. You can definitely afford this and higher. So in the past, we have seen that. If the government is involved, the seller also feels that they can charge more. So that could be something that is not beneficial for the market and for first-time buyers throughout that, especially the ones that won't be able to benefit from this down payment assistance program. Basically, I think we need a lot more information on how her administration would accomplish this and what areas will it affect. Meaning, in government, it's not just one area that they make a rule and then all of a sudden it's just that. Usually there's a domino effect. So I'd like to know more about that. So it sounds very pretty, But without a plan and the details, it can actually turn really ugly. So I'm really excited to see what she will propose in her administration. And hopefully, I know we have like less than 40 days left for the administration. I hope that they lay this plan out and we can take a look at it. If we do get that, we can come back and get more details and we can report back on that.
Sorry, this reminds me of that saying, when they said that instead of giving someone a fish, teach them how to fish. I kind of see this in a similar way of how
It
this
can
saying
be,
is.
and it can be. It's just we don't have the details yet to make that determination. So once we have the details, then we can see and get more information in regards to that. As far as Trump's plan, it also sounds promising. Yes, there are some ridiculous regulations that absolutely make no sense at all.
Well,
But
I just remembered one regulation. So, for example, if you buy a piece of property and it's in a zoning where there might be certain insects on that
Right.
in that land, then you have to do an environmental feasibility study, right? So to do that, you have to hire the county approved organization that they have approved that will tell you whether there is evidence of this bug, this insect that lives there. And if there is evidence of it, then you cannot touch that land. So, and also this study, gosh, like it takes sometimes years for you to complete. So if you can buy a piece of property and you can have a beautiful plan for it, you can you're like, oh man, I'm gonna do this. You can have a vision, but then you go through all these different agencies and then you find out, yeah, there's this little insect that lives there. Sorry, can't touch it. Go find another piece of property. That to me just sounds ridiculous. So
no, for sure. I mean, and that plan that you could have bought this piece of land, and the plan that you had was to build this great company that can provide so many jobs for that area, bring in income, bring in jobs for those people. And because of some insect, you're not allowed to do that. So, I mean, when you put the two and two together, it's like, yeah, that sounds pretty ridiculous. But what regulation is he referring to, or regulations? We need to make sure that all health and safety regulations, or some health and safety regulations, such as fire egress, that if the house gets on fire or the building gets on fire, that there's enough room for people to get out of the windows or whatever, right? We need to make sure that there's proper grounding for electrical, there's backflow prevention for plumbing, structural integrity. So we have to make sure that those regulations are not touched, because those are health and safety, right? So above all, I love the idea of free market solving these issues and not necessarily the government. I would like the government to be involved less, of course, and this has proven to be more effective in the long run. But let's see what each administration shows us, hopefully before we have to vote.
how many people's votes are determined by knowing this? Like, I mean, I don't think that
You're right.
there's a lot, So, gosh,
I mean,
don't know.
us being in the housing industry, obviously this is something that's important to us. But yeah, you're right. For like average person who is not involved in real estate and is looking to buy a home 5 years down the road, they're not looking at this. And Kamala's plan does sound very pretty. Hey, I'm going to give you money to buy a house. So that does sound nice, but we have to see and think about it long term and long run.
But I guess we can also look at Donald Trump's background. He was always in real estate, so I'm sure that he knows what kind of regulations are there that are just don't make any sense, because he's probably done so many deals in went through different situations where it's like a lot of those regulations can be moved, and that's what actually he did in his prior administration. After he got elected, he removed a lot of regulations that brought a lot of businesses back here. So I think I have hope in that. I feel like that can actually work. Let's talk about some of the tips for first-time home buyers. These are some of the questions that always conversations about. What can you tell us? How can you help us be ready to buy our first home?
I see you made some points.
I did. So
Let's hear
some of
those.
my tips is obviously at the very beginning, you have to plan for this. So it should not be where you have a desire to buy a home. Hey, honey, let's go home shopping. No, you got to make a plan ahead of time, because very often when you actually do want to buy a home and you did not plan, most likely there will be some obstacles that you will have to overcome before you can actually. So you can see some attractive house that you will absolutely love, and then you will be disappointed because you didn't plan for it, to find out that you need to wait another month or 2 months because there was a little issue with your employment, with whatever, right? There can be a lot of reasons. So number one, I would say you gotta plan ahead of time. Number two, buy below your means. This is something that I see a lot of younger people do, is they always want to get that house that they barely qualify for, and then they're struggling. Something happens with their job. They have to buy a new car because their car broke down, and now they're struggling to make these payments. So it is safer to buy below your means. Number three, save as much money as you can. This is something that is just, people need to understand the importance of saving money. Unfortunately, majority of the younger generation right now, they're not used to it. And not only not used to it, maybe they're not taught to save money, or because of inflation and everything else, like whatever money they're making, they just don't have the ability to save. But still have to find a way to save money, because when you are a homeowner, there's going to be always things that will require you to put out money, whether something breaks, you got to replace the roof, whatever it is. Number four, I say this, if it's possible, is to start with a duplex. We started with the duplex. Our first property we bought was a duplex. At first, I was hesitant. Like, living in a duplex, no. But boy, did that really make sense for us. We lived in one side. We collected the rent on the other side. The rent that we collected pretty much paid for our mortgage payment. So we were living almost for free. That right there, especially as your first property, can really, really work out. And also, even when you move on, you buy a house, you can keep that duplex, and that can be your income property that will be generating income for you for a long time. And then number five, choose a real estate professional who will give you honest advice without being pushy and salesy. We have a lot of those realtors. As soon as they sense that you're going to be the buyer or you're a seller, then they start really like pushing you, and they can like almost force you to buy a property that you don't really need. So you got to be careful around that, and take time to shop around very often. Those are my 5 tips for first-time home buyers.
Okay. Well, number 1 and number 5 were my favorite. Number 1 was make a plan ahead of time, and number 5 was choose real estate professionals who will give you honest advice. We have to plan ahead, especially in this market. If you're a first-time buyer and you don't know what's going on, just got out of college, got married, planning to start a family, all that stuff, you need to plan ahead. You have to get with the right experts that won't be pushy, that won't try to tell you, you have to buy right now, otherwise the prices will increase and whatnot. Now, get with somebody that will look at your financial situation, will look at your plans, will look at your goals. Oh, you just got married. Are you guys having kids? Are you looking to look for kids later? Is school important? That kind of stuff. So you plan with somebody. The most information that you have and the more time that you have, you'll be able to make the right decision. So I say there's no such thing as planning too early. And unfortunately, the way that the market has been, most buyers start shopping on their own on Zillow, Realtor.com, going to open houses. They start dreaming. They start thinking, oh, that's where I'm going to have my Christmas tree. Oh, this is going to be Junior's room. Oh, I can walk him to school, all that stuff, getting emotionally attached to properties or neighborhoods without actually looking at their financial situations. And with all the different aspects now, like you said, student loans, car loans, all these different things, they really need to get all their ducks in a row in order to make sure that they are going to buy at the right time that's most optimal for them. So having the right experts that will say, hey, this is your steps. This is what you're going to do. It might take you 5 years, but hey, we're going to be here. And every 6 months, every year, every 1 month, let's circle back. Let's have a meeting and see how you're doing on your plan. Do you need any additional help? Oh, you got a raise? Great. We just, improved it by this much and so forth. So having experts that are not wanting to push that sale, but genuinely want to help you,
Listen.
it's so important.
Yeah. So it's October
Mhm.
2024. And we're still in real estate, right?
I
We're
hope
still
so.
doing real estate. Well, according to 99% of articles after the NAR settlement, supposedly a whole bunch of real estate agents were supposed to just go away. And people are still confused and they don't really understand what actually took place and what change was implemented. Can you just briefly talk about it? I don't want to go really, because we already did this, we already talked about this. What actually changed? We are now in October. Change already took place. What's different?
We had a podcast a little while ago where you and I were kind of giving our predictions. We reviewed the law a lot, and based on all those lawsuits and the legal jargon and documents, we kind of gave our predictions.
Mhm.
And I'll be honest with you, we were right on the dot. Nothing
Mhm.
changed other than a couple of additional pieces of paper. Estimates suggest that the majority of buyers' agents still get paid by sellers directly, and early reports show that sellers and buyers negotiate and still have the sellers pay the buyer's agent commission. Just extra paperwork, just as we had expected. So nothing really changed there much at all, other than having the buyers sign the agreement up front and then negotiating that part when writing the offer. As a matter of fact, we are getting tons of ads, emails, and just bombarded with seller willing to pay concessions to cover agent commission, seller offering 3% commission. So in some cases, it almost seems like, since now that's not advertised, it's kind of giving a heavier push of, like, in some cases, agents are getting a little bit more commission too because they're asking for it and sellers are saying okay. So kind of what we predicted happened, and there hasn't been much change at all.
All right. The next thing I want to talk about is there's a very high percentage of people who get into the real estate business and they fail. They're out. In about a year or two, they are out without even doing their first sale. A lot of people get into it for whatever reasons, and they don't stick with being a realtor. So the question arises, who is real estate for? What kind of person succeeds being a realtor and what kind of person does not?
This is now my 20th year in real estate, and what I can kind of tell is the kind of people, the kind of agents that succeed in this industry. You can kind of feel it. They have a passion and a love for helping people achieve their dream, not those agents that just chase money or lifestyle. I think that's huge. Unfortunately, a lot of those TV shows, real estate agent lifestyle TV shows, made it seem so glamorous, and you drive up in this beautiful car and you have these nice shoes and outfits, lifestyle, and go to these glamorous parties. People sometimes chase that versus agents that really are passionate about helping people, passionate about real estate, helping people achieve what we call the American dream, helping families, helping solve problems and issues, actually taking the time, like we talked about previously, right? With having the expert that doesn't want to just sell you now, but will be with you, whether it takes you 6 months, a year, or 2 years. They will take that time to plan with you and your family and be there with you the whole time, and not just in the month that you want to buy a home, but they're with you the whole time. Those are the kind of agents that will always be successful no matter what the market happens. And we've seen that. We've seen so much fluctuation in the market, and we've seen what kind of agents are still around and what kind were they're flashy. They show their flashy lifestyle. Next thing you know, they're working at some other job. So I think that's really important.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is you have to be hardworking. You have to be honest. And yes, you have to be passionate about that. A lot of people get into it because it's really easy to get licensed, right?
Mm-hmm.
You just take a couple of online courses, you pay a small fee to get licensed, you get licensed, and they think that once they're licensed, everybody's going to come knocking on their door. You know, they announce it on Instagram, and all of a sudden they think they're going to get flooded with DMs talking about, hey, I want you to sell my home. I want to buy a home. No, you have to be hardworking. You have to be ethical and honest.
Why do you think most people give up even before succeeding? I wrote here that they have lack of patience. There's a lot of distractions, negative attitude. I know those people with negative attitude, they don't last. I think just in business in general,
Right,
they're not resourceful
right,
because there's a lot of resources available, but you have to be resourceful in order to reach those resources. Very often they have victim mentality or lack of support. Maybe they join a group, a realtor, a brokerage where they don't really have much support. I mean, they can direct them, hey, you can get this training here, you can get this training here, but you still have to have someone who can like kind of mentor you and walk you, but you have to be willing to. And small vision, that's kind of what I think.
Specifically, if we're talking about real estate, I think I covered it a little bit, but I think a lot of those people that specifically got into real estate that didn't succeed was because they thought that it was much easier to be successful, and they were not prepared for the hard work to make them successful. I mentioned before the TV shows and whatnot, everything that glamorized it made it look like it was easy. The other thing was a lot of people got licensed when there was really low interest rates, and with all the COVID changes where people were like wanting to relocate and whatnot. So the interest rates and the COVID relocating made selling homes super easy. So it was like you didn't really have to make much effort really to do that. So it made it really easy. And then when things changed in the market, you know, they have that victim mentality, I guess, or they don't have that work ethic and they kind of give up. The other thing is, I think work ethic in today's culture is kind of almost like a bad word. They want immediate satisfaction. The culture tells you, you deserve it, right? You deserve, I don't know why, but a lot of people just think that they deserve things. A lot of the quick satisfaction, like, you know, you order something and it's delivered to your door. So people are thinking instant gratification or instant satisfaction or whatever, right? So all of that kind of comes into play where people are like, I made 10 phone calls. I should get a deal. And they sit back and wait. They don't make the additional 10 or 20 or whatever. They kind of give up and they're like, I did my part. Now you guys do your part, right? So they don't want to put in that extra work. They have that, how can I work less but get paid more? You know, there's books written about it. There's podcasts. There was a whole thing about, you know, soft quitting or whatever it's called. I think that previous generations before social media, before all these TV shows really hit on, and they were taught to work hard even when nobody's looking. Because the more harder you work, you will eventually get it and somebody will see. Whether you come in early to a shop and you sweep up the shop and you clean in the places that nobody ever looks at, and then the owner comes in and was like, who did this? You know, and you get noticed. Versus in today's culture and society, people are not taught the hard work. They're more like, you have to, you know, whatever you do, make sure everybody knows about it. And kind of like, how can I get away with less? So I think we have to kind of go back into the work ethic and work extra hard, and the success will follow.
Yeah, I agree. Moving on. In the last couple weeks, I've heard this myth, and I just kind of want us to debunk it. So the myth is that these people were saying that, hey, I've heard that the properties that come up on the Zillow, Redfin, Realtor.com, anything that's on MLS, it's already the type of properties that come up who don't really like they're not really that great, that the best properties, they get sold somewhere else. And I just kind of wanted to debunk this because that's not true. If you are a seller and you want to get the best price for your home, you want competition, you're not going to sell it to the one and only offer that somebody brings you. You actually wanted to put it out there, now open the market and get multiple offers so that you get the most. So most of the time, that's just not true. Yes, there are certain homes that sell without being going on the market. And there are certain investors and stuff companies who are buying homes like that by going directly to the homeowner. But in most cases, almost all of the deals that we've done, the best deals that we've got for our clients, they were all on MLS, right? And right now, as soon as a property comes out on MLS, it's on Zillow, it's on Redfin, it's all over the internet. So that's a myth. It's not true. If you like this video, here's another one for you to watch. If you don't want to miss the next video, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification button.